They kicked me out of the house and then crawled to me on their knees begging for money. I didn't expect them to take revenge like this for my $0 check. I was 19 when my parents told me I didn't exist anymore. No goodbye, no second chance, just silence and a locked front door. I thought that was the end of my story. I thought I'd disappear and they'd forget me. But years later, I built a life they couldn't ignore. Then, out of nowhere, they came back with smiles, praise, and a contract in hand. What they didn't know, I already knew everything, and I wasn't coming to dinner. I was coming to end the performance. They didn't cry. They didn't yell. My dad didn't say anything at first, just looked me up and down like I was a stranger who had wandered into their house by mistake. My mom folded her hands in her lap and asked me in a voice so calm it made my stomach twist, "Are you sure you want to destroy this family?" I said I wasn't destroying anything. I was just being honest. That was the last time I stepped foot in that house. I was 19. I left with a small suitcase, my laptop, and exactly $37 in my checking account. No hugs, no goodbye, just silence, then the slow click of the front door shutting behind me like a lock being turned. They didn't even offer me a coat and it was snowing. I didn't sleep the first night. I stayed in a 24-hour diner with a coffee I couldn't afford to refill, charging my phone under the counter while pretending to study. The waitress gave me free toast. She probably knew. The second night, I crashed on a classmate's couch. I didn't tell them why I suddenly needed a place. Just made a joke about my parents being too intense. They laughed. I didn't. What no one tells you is that when you lose your family like that, you start grieving people who are still alive. I thought they'd reach out. I kept expecting a call, a text, some kind of cold "we're thinking about you even if we're not ready" message. But nothing came. Days became weeks, and then one night I got a message from my aunt. It said, "Your parents say you're nothing to them. Don't contact us again." That was the only message I got from anyone in my extended family for the next 6 years. Life didn't get easier fast. I bounced from couch to couch for months. Worked 3 part-time jobs just to stay in school. Grocery store cashier during the day, food delivery at night, freelance gigs squeezed in between. I never let myself stop moving. Not because I was ambitious, because I was scared. Every time I slowed down, I remembered I had no one. Holidays were the worst. I'd lie and tell coworkers I was traveling to visit my uncle upstate just to avoid pity looks. I once spent Christmas Eve in a library study room. Heating was free there, but I didn't break. And not because I'm some hero. I didn't break because I was angry. Not loud, throw stuff angry. Quiet, cold angry. The kind that keeps your back straight even when everything else is collapsing. The kind that whispers you'll never need them again. And that whisper kept me alive. I remember one day during my second year of college, I was scrolling through social media while eating half a sandwich I had saved from a shift. A girl from my high school posted a photo of my parents at a community event. There was a caption, "So proud of this power couple, always supporting traditional values." I stared at it until my eyes burned. They smiled like nothing was missing, like I never existed. They even gave a speech that day. I found the video clip. My mom said, "Family is the root of everything. A tree without roots falls." And I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my sandwich. I didn't mean to get successful. I just didn't have any other choice. One of my side gigs was coding. I'd always been into it, little games, freelance apps, automation tools. Out of desperation, I built a small tool for myself to schedule deliveries efficiently. Posted about it on a tech forum. Someone asked for a copy, then someone else, then a small startup offered to buy it. I didn't sell. I expanded it. It grew fast. By the time I was 25, I had a team of 8 people working on my app full time. By 27, I'd licensed it to 3 major companies. But I'm getting ahead of myself because before the money came in, something else happened first. And that's when things started to twist. I was standing in line at a convenience store when I saw her, my cousin. The same one who used to braid my hair and sneak candy into my backpack when I was little. She saw me. Her face went pale. She looked around like she wasn't sure if she should run or speak. She didn't say hello. She just stared and said, "I didn't think you were still around." Then she paid for her chips and left. That's when I knew they hadn't just cut me off. They'd erased me. Told the family I vanished, that I walked away from everything. Maybe even worse. But the worst part? I believed them. I believed I was worth abandoning. Until I realized what they feared most was that I'd survive. And soon, they were going to see exactly what survival looked like. I was doing okay by the time I turned 25. Not rich, not famous, but I wasn't scraping for rent anymore. I had my own small place, the kind of apartment you walk through in 30 seconds, but to me, it felt like a fortress. It was mine. Everything in it I bought. The fridge, the mattress, even the light bulbs. And I didn't owe anyone for any of it. That winter, I got invited to speak at a small local tech event. My software had just landed its first real licensing deal with a mid-sized logistics company. Nothing huge, but big enough that people were suddenly asking me questions like, "So where do you see the company in 5 years?" It was flattering, weird, but mostly it was the first time I felt seen. So I showed up to the event, did my little presentation, answered questions, shook hands. Then during the networking break, I saw him. My older brother. He was standing near the back with a coffee in one hand and a name badge around his neck. I stopped mid-sentence. One of the event coordinators asked me something, but I couldn't hear it. My ears were ringing. He hadn't seen me yet. I stepped back into the hallway like I needed air. I stood there, pressed against the wall, trying to slow my heart down. What was he doing there? Why would he be at a tech event? Last I heard, which honestly was years ago through an old Facebook memory, he was helping our dad run the family hardware store. Did they send him? No, that didn't make sense. I went back into the room. I needed answers. He saw me this time. His face locked. No emotion. No smile. just tension, like he was bracing for something. I walked up, slowly. He didn't move. I said hey. He said, didn't expect to see you here. That was all. Not, how have you been? Not, it's been a long time. Not even, I'm sorry. Just that. I asked what he was doing here. He said he worked in logistics consulting now, for a firm that was evaluating software integration. My software. That's when it hit me. He wasn't there for me. He was there for the product. I should have walked away, but something in me, maybe that angry whisper again, told me to stay. We talked for 5 minutes. During that time, he never brought up what happened. Never asked about the years we lost. Never even said my name. He did, however, mention this. Mom's not doing great. She asks about you, you know, quietly. I blinked. She said I was dead to her. She was angry, he replied. She didn't mean forever. That's when I realized he thought I'd just drift back. That one cryptic update would somehow erase the years of silence. The erasure. The public shaming. That I'd just show up for Sunday lunch like nothing happened. He gave me his card. Told me to call if I ever felt like seeing the family again. I didn't take it. 2 weeks later, I got a message. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Just a photo. It was my mom. In a hospital bed. No caption. No, we're this place. No request. Just the image. And for a second I felt it. That pull. That panic. That instinct that said, go. She's your mother. Then I looked closer. She was smiling. Behind her, my dad stood next to my brother. And in my mom's hands, I kid you not, was a copy of a local magazine I had just been featured in. Front page. They weren't mourning. They were celebrating. Like I was a trophy they forgot they threw away. I didn't reply, but something shifted after that. Because a week later, it started. First, a friend told me my parents had mentioned me at their church group. Said I'd been through a rough patch, but was doing exciting things now. Then another friend from high school sent me a screenshot of my dad commenting on a post about my startup. He wrote, so proud of what he's building. We always knew he had it in him. I stared at that sentence for a long time. That fake ownership. I was building something with blood in my teeth, with empty pockets, with nights I didn't sleep because I didn't know if I'd eat tomorrow, and now they wanted to act like they'd known all along. Then came the invitation. My aunt, the same one who told me not to contact them, sent me a long email. Friendly, like nothing had ever happened. She said my parents were planning a small family dinner to reconnect and celebrate my accomplishments. No apology, no accountability, just plates and smiles and probably some passive-aggressive prayer circle. That night, I didn't sleep again, but it wasn't fear this time. It was fury. They wanted me to come back now that I had something to offer, but they had no idea what I was actually planning. I thought, maybe silence is enough. Maybe success is the best response. But then they pushed hard. It started small. I got a request through my company's contact form, someone asking for a sponsorship donation to a local family values fundraiser. I almost ignored it. Then I noticed the sender. It was my mother. She signed it Proud Mom, the same woman who once whispered, you'll burn in shame, under her breath when I tried to hug her goodbye. That's when I snapped. It wasn't just the fake support. It was the audacity. They buried me and now they wanted to plant their flag on what grew back. So I made a choice. No rage, no shouting, just cold precision. It began with a podcast. A pretty big one had invited me on talk about bootstrapping success. I agreed with a condition. I wanted to tell my real story, not the sugar-coated tech loner makes it tale. The host said yes, so I told it. Everything. The couch hopping, the silence from my parent, the day my mom said I didn't exist, the photo of her smiling from a hospital bed, not in pain, but in pride after seeing me in a magazine. I never used their names, never named the town, but anyone who knew us would know. I didn't do it to expose them. I did it to reclaim the truth. It went viral, and not in a small way. People reposted the clips, quoted the parts about being erased, about surviving on anger, about rebuilding when you're starting from zero and carrying rejection like a backpack full of bricks. It hit a nerve, and suddenly people were asking for more. I started getting interview requests, speaking invites. My company's user base tripled in a month. That's when the second wave of emails came in, this time from extended family. Some angry, some shocked, some pretending they didn't know what my parents had done. But one stood out. It was my cousin, the one who had said, I didn't think you were still around. She said, they're panicking. Your dad's business is struggling and now they think you're going to destroy them. They're calling everyone, saying you made it all up. I didn't reply. I didn't have to, because the truth was already out there, and it had teeth. But it still wasn't over. The next blow came out of nowhere. A reporter contacted me, someone from a mid-sized media outlet. She said she was doing a follow-up on the podcast story, digging into the family legacy of the man behind the software. She said she spoke to my brother, and that he gave her documents. That's when things escalated. Turns out, while I'd been busy surviving, they'd been filing legal paperwork claiming to own part of my business. Apparently, my dad had registered a shell company years ago with a nearly identical name, hoping to make a legal case that I'd stolen the idea from his family's concept. It was a stretch, a ridiculous one, but it was enough to trigger legal headaches. And in that moment, I realized something. They weren't just trying to crawl back into my life. They were trying to take it. So I hit back with facts, receipts, emails, timestamped code log, every detail of my project's timeline, locked in and lawyer reviewed. We shut down their claim in a week, but I didn't stop there. I took out a full-page ad in the local paper, the same one that had printed their community values quotes years ago. It didn't name them. It didn't mention lawsuits or shame or history. It was just a single image, a blank check, signed to those who only showed up when I had something to give. Amount $0. No signature, no address, but everyone in that town knew exactly who it was for. The fallout was instant. Calls, emails, church elders reaching out in love, but I didn't reply to any of them, because that was the moment I realized realized. They didn't want me back. They wanted the version of me they could show off. Not the nights I didn't eat. Not the months I cried so quietly on borrowed beds that the pillows stained with salt. So I buried them back with silence. They invited me again. This time personally. A letter, not an email, handwritten by my mother. Elegant cursive. No apology. Just an invitation to a family reconciliation dinner. No location at first glance. Just the words. It would mean everything to us if you gave us a second chance. We're proud of you. Always were. Please come home. That phrase, come home, sat in my hands like it had weight. But the kicker was inside the envelope. There was a photo of me from a magazine spread that had run just a month earlier, professionally shot, printed in color, folded neatly, and annotated with red pen. Notes about how proud they were. Underlined sentences. Circles around phrases like self-made and resilient. They turned my story into a trophy display. Again, but something in me paused. Not because I was falling for it, because I felt like this wasn't it. Something else was coming. So I agreed. Not because I wanted a hug, but because I wanted a front row seat to whatever stunt they were planning next. The dinner was at a fancy restaurant in the city, not the kind of place my parents ever stepped into before. Too modern, too different, but here they were, all dressed up. Dad in a stiff blazer, mom in pearls, my brother in a tie I'm 90% sure was borrowed. They stood when I walked in, like we were on a stage. The waiter guided me to the table. No one spoke until we sat down. Then my mom smiled, the kind of smile people wear at funerals when they're trying not to cry, and said, "You look healthy." I said nothing. My dad cleared his throat and added, "I've been keeping track. You've done well." Still nothing. My brother tried to break the tension. "So, thinking of settling down? Anyone special?" I smiled. There was, for a long time, but he got tired of competing with a ghost. Silence. My mom flinched. My dad adjusted his cuffs. Then, right on cue, the real reason for the dinner arrived. An envelope. Thick. Fancy seal. My name embossed. They slid it across the table like a contract. I didn't open it. Just stared. "It's a proposal," my dad said. "A partnership. You've built something incredible," my mom added. "And we have a vision. Something long-term. Family branded. You'd be the face. We'd provide legacy, values, guidance." I blinked. Slowly. "You disowned me," I said flatly. My mom leaned in. Her voice dropped. "And we're sorry. But now we can move forward. With the right image, you, us, it could be a powerful story of forgiveness." That was it. It wasn't about love. They wanted to package our pain into a narrative they could use. They wanted a redemption arc where they were the ones forgiving me. I stood up. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just pulled a folded check from my pocket. I'd had it printed the day before, just in case. It was blank, except for one thing. In bold letter, pay to the order of the people who only cared when I started making money. Amount $0. Memo, you had your chance. I placed it gently next to the untouched dessert plates. Then I turned and walked out. I made it all the way to the sidewalk before I heard someone running after me. It was my brother. He was breathless, arms wide like he was trying to stop traffic. "Please," he said. "Just listen." I didn't. "They're desperate. The store's failing. Dad took a bad loan. Mom's health isn't great. They're scared." "Okay." I nodded. "So now I'm useful." "No," he said. "You were always a..." "Don't," I cut in. "Don't rewrite it. You watched it happen. You helped it happen." He said nothing. Then, and this shook me, he pulled something out of his jacket. A flash drive. "This is everything," he said. "Records, emails, statements. They tried to hide things. From the church, from the community. This proves it." I stared. "Why give it to me?" He looked down. "Because I think they're going to blame you. When the money runs out. When it all collapses. I don't want to be part of that." I took the drive. Quietly. Then I turned to leave. And he said one last thing. "You were never nothing to me." I just didn't know how to stand up. I didn't look back. I left it on the kitchen counter. I didn't know if opening it would make me feel vindicated or sick. But by day 4, curiosity beat caution. I plugged it into my laptop and found a folder name. Redacted records, do not share. Inside were over 70 files. Invoices, correspondence, insurance fraud filing, a few legal memos with highlighted sections, and a document that made my hands go numb. It was a statement from a medical institution, one I recognized. A bill for inpatient psychiatric care. Not for my mother. Not for my father. For me. Except I had never stayed at that hospital. According to the paperwork, I had received emergency psychiatric intervention and counseling for delusional behavior following estrangement from family due to identity confusion. It was forged. They had filed it. Claimed insurance money using my name to cover expenses for their business during the same year they kicked me out. They profited off my erasure. And worse, they told people I was mentally unstable. Suddenly everything made sense. The strange reactions when I ran into extended family, the distant looks, the quiet head tilts. They hadn't just cut me off. They'd rewritten me. I forwarded the documents to my lawyer the same day. His reply was immediate. "This is criminal. We can bury them with this." But I didn't want courtrooms. I wanted clarity. So I made one more move. A message to the same podcast that had shared my story months before. I told them I was ready for a follow-up, this time with proof. They agreed. And within a week, we recorded a second episode. This time, I brought receipts. I blurred names, hid addresses, but the truth rang louder than any slander ever could. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I laid it all out. What they filed, what they took, how they claimed me as unstable while cashing in on my silence. The reaction was explosive. Hashtags started trending. Journalists began digging. An expose dropped within days titled, "The Cost of Being Erased, How One Family Profited from Abandoning Their Own." It didn't name them, but in their town, it didn't have to. Church groups split. Old business partners backed out. Their store, already struggling, saw walkouts. And then came the letter. Not from my parents, from their lawyer. They threatened defamation, said I was endangering their livelihood, that I was turning public opinion against honest people. I didn't respond, but my legal team did. We sent a reply with with the forged documents, insurance claims, the psychiatric records, and a note. We're happy to go to court. Let's have that conversation under oath. They dropped everything, vanished, but the final blow wasn't from me. It was from the media. An anonymous whistleblower, who I'm sure was my brother, sent internal church emails to a journalist, ones that showed how my parents used their influence to control narratives, pressure relatives, and manipulate donations. They were quietly removed from leadership. The next day, a new message showed up in my inbox. It was from my mother. Just 2 lines. "We lost everything. Are you happy now?" I read it twice. Then I wrote back, "You didn't lose everything. You threw it away." I hit send, blocked the number, and for the first time in over a decade, I felt something strange. A few weeks passed. The noise died down. The interviews slowed. The town moved on, but I couldn't. Not completely. Something kept tugging at me, a thread I hadn't pulled. And then it happened. An email from my old college roommate, the one who let me crash on their couch when I first got kicked out. Subject line, "Thought you should see this. Sorry I didn't tell you sooner." Attached was a PDF, a scanned letter dated years ago, stamped and official looking, from my parents, addressed to him. My hands trembled as I opened it. The letter was a request, a condition, a warning. "If you allow him to stay with you, you are under obligation not to discuss our family. We are managing his instability privately. Please refrain from indulging his confusion." It was signed, both parents, with my brother copied at the bottom. They had sent letters to every person I stayed with, old professors, classmates, even an employer. One by one, people I thought were just neutral had been informed, coached to believe I was unstable, dangerous, confused. That's why people kept their distance. And the one person I thought was my safe space had known. I called him. He picked up on the first ring. I asked him, "Why didn't you tell me?" His answer? "I didn't know what was real back then. They made it sound serious. I thought maybe you were sick and just didn't know it." I couldn't even speak. He added, "But I never believed you deserved it. That's why I let you stay." "Because you pitied me?" "No," he said, "because deep down I knew they were lying, but I didn't want to be in the middle of it. And that was it. Not hatred, not malice, just cowardice. He didn't mean harm. He just didn't stop it. And honestly, that hurt more than anything else." I went back through my inbox, my DMs, my call history, and it became clear. The erasure wasn't a one-time thing. It was a campaign. My family hadn't just disowned me. They managed my absence, built a false version of me, spread it, controlled it. And when that version no longer served them, they tried to plug me back in as if I hadn't spent years rebuilding myself from nothing. But here's the real ending. I took the story, all of it. I turned it into something permanent. A short documentary, self-produced, professionally made, titled $0.00, The Cost of Being Thrown Away. It wasn't revenge. It was record. I launched it on the anniversary of the day they kicked me out. Within 24 hours, it had 2 million views. By week's end, I had an offer for distribution. But what mattered most? The messages from others. People who didn't need a check. They just needed to know they weren't alone. And my parents? Last I heard, they sold the house, moved out of state. No one wanted to hear from her. Not anymore.